Hi, my name is Matthew Nilsson, and this is my informative speech for Fundamentals of Speech Online at Southeastern University for Week 5. And tonight I'm going to talk to you all about the United States Constitution. And rather than going step by step through each article and amendment, which would probably get a little boring to hear me speak about, I'm going to tell you about everything that surrounds the Constitution. In a time when governments and economies all over the world are in disarray, one of the greatest things we as Americans have to hold on to is our United States Constitution. This document lays out the framework for our government and provides all the basis for all laws and protections of our rights as human beings. The United States Constitution is 4,400 words long and is the oldest and shortest written constitution of any major government in the world. It has a rich history, and there's a lot of information surrounding the Constitution that many people don't always realize, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about tonight. The first form of an American constitution-like document were state charters. These were granted by the English Crown, with the first being the First Charter of Virginia, granted in 1606. However, these were very restricted in what it laid out. It was granted by the English government rather than the people or representatives of the states themselves, and therefore they were not allowed to put any of their input into the laws that were written into the Constitution. And in the mid-1770s, once America was gaining more independence from the English Crown, state constitutions were established. And these were established by representatives who were elected by the people of each of their states. And these were covenant-like documents in the sense that it formed a legally binding agreement between two parties or more, in the sense that it created the agreement between the representatives of the government and the people of those states to create a framework and a basis for all laws that would be passed further on in time. And however, these were more catered to the individual states and to the citizens of those states, but there were also severe limitations to these as well. They failed to provide an adequate system of separation of powers, didn't provide a judicial system or an executive branch, at least a strong executive branch, and this caused problems because then states weren't required to work together, and in the case of national defense or any sort of interstate relations, it made it much more difficult without having a constitution governing a centralized government system. And two men that I want to speak about who were instrumental in the constitutional process, who don't often get good enough reward in history, are John Adams and James Madison. John Adams is often known as the father of constitutionalism. He was a very well-educated man in all political theory, from ancient Greek and Roman political philosophers to contemporary English theorists. And he was the first to sort of establish the idea of an American Constitution document. He wrote Thoughts on Government, which was the first piece of written work that laid out the framework and the idea, framework, and an actual outline of what a constitution should look like in America. And that was instrumental in providing the whole movement and basis for the constitutional process to move forward. And James Madison was also extremely instrumental and is often known for his work as the father of the Constitution. And the difference between the father of constitutionalism and the father of the Constitution is that James Madison was instrumental in the actual process of getting the Constitution passed. He was the key champion for bringing people together to compromise and draft the legislation and getting enough votes to pass it. He was also the key champion for the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which provide freedom of religion, press, speech, freedom of assembly, the right to bear arms, and all of those freedoms that we as human beings enjoy that the government cannot take away, and he was key in fighting for those to be added. He also was the only person to record the unofficial minutes of what actually went on in the Constitutional Convention, and it's the only report, the comprehensive report that we have to know kind of what went on in session of the Constitutional Convention. He spoke over 200 times at the convention and was well respected for his constitutional advocacy and the whole process of getting it passed. And the Articles of Confederation were the first attempt at creating a national constitution. And this was created after the Revolutionary War and was created to kind of give a loose framework of a central government, but still make sure that states had complete sovereignty. And giving states complete sovereignty was what the main limitation of the Articles of Confederation. It didn't provide for a strong Congress, executive branch, or national judicial system. And this caused problems for interstate commerce, interstate transportational, national defense. All of these things are very hard to do without a centralized government bringing all of the states together. Under the Articles of Confederation, there was a very loose connection with the states, and they weren't required to work together as much as they are under the United States Constitution. And the Constitutional Convention was held in 1787, originally held to to adapt and to adjust the Articles of Confederation to fix the limitations that it provided, but in the end, it thankfully came out with the Constitution that we know and love today. And just a few highlights from the Constitution. I'm not going to go through the entire thing, and I hope that you all find a copy online that's free, listed all over the place, to read, because it really is useful to read and see how the Constitution connects with what our government's doing today. But I wanted to just bring up a few highlights. Personally, my favorite part of the Constitution is the preamble. It states, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." And while this particular section is not legally binding, as the rest of the Constitution is, it has such rich content that provides the basis for American society and the rights, freedoms, and basis for law that America still holds today. The United States government, these are the initial, most important things that the government is responsible for doing. It's responsible for forming a more perfect union of the states, bringing them together to make sure that they work together, establishing justice to make sure that no innocent person is tried against their will or tried unjustly, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense. It brings the nation together for the actions of national defense, the army, military. All of that is much more connected under the United States Constitution than it was before. And the amendments, the most important amendments, in my personal opinion, are the Bill of Rights. Not to make this a persuasive speech, but the Bill of Rights provide all of our bases of freedoms and rights that we as human beings have that no government anywhere in the world should be able to take away, such as religion, free speech, press, the right to bear arms, the right to assembly. All of those that I spoke about before are vital to our freedom as human beings living in a nation that has a government to keep order. The United States Constitution was created as a document that should both remain unchanged from its original form, despite some amendments, but that is also should be applicable as much in 2150 as it is in 2012, as it was at the 1787 Constitutional Convention. It's organic in the sense that it applies to life today in America, but it is not organic in the sense that we should be reading modern culture into the Constitution and changing what the original meaning was behind the words and what the founders meant when they created this Constitution that was created as a means to keep a check and a balance on the government from expanding too large. Its content has transcended time and culture, and it continues to provide us with the basis of the government we enjoy today. It is a document that garners great praise and adoration for providing a set structure of government, as well as contention when issues arise with whether laws that we pass today are constitutional and if they apply to everything, that all the rules that were created in the Constitution. However, it is still by far the best single piece of legislation in American history, and it will continue to endure for a very long time and make sure that our government doesn't expand beyond its reaches. Thank you. I hope it was enjoyable, and I hope you learned something tonight. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.